How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. Just got done reading all my books, have a mixture of physical and digital. Let's get into it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put my grading scale up. How this works is, as I bring a book up, I'm going to put the cover of that book on the grading scale so you can see how they stack up against each other. And with that out of the way, we're going to go over into the big two first, starting with Venom and Moon Knight, issue number 23, Jed MacKay. So we are starting to introduce Venom into a lot of different storylines right now. I would assume to be building up this big symbiote event that's going to be happening here in the summer. This was actually a cool issue. Dylan Brock is a little bit on the run right now from some mercenaries, and he's actually coming to Moon Knight's midnight mission for a little bit of protection right here. And so, of course, Moon Knight takes him on in. He actually sees a little bit of himself in him. He actually relates to his father, to Eddie Brock a little bit as well. So like they connect really quickly, which I think is pretty awesome. And they let the mercenaries think they can come in and kind of own the place. You know what I mean? So we get a little bit of the midnight mission, the little house that he's created, have their way with these guys. And he's kind of coaching Dylan in a way as Venom to really use his powers, to really analyze the battlefield, see where the weaknesses are, see what the play is. And so it was really cool to see these two teaming up and to be like a mentor to Dylan. I thought it was pretty well executed. Story is great. The art is spectacular. If you've liked how Moon Knight's been looking so far with that like radiance, that glow that they have, it's all over this issue and it's really cool. I wouldn't even consider this really a filler issue, even though it kind of is a filler issue. We don't really progress too much the Moon Knight part of this, although the thread that we've been following over the last few issues, we do head in that direction, but it has a weird abrupt ending in this issue here, which kind of threw me off a little bit. But I like the collaboration. It could have been way worse. It's actually pretty awesome. Check this one out. The next one we read this week was Cult of Carnage Misery issue number 1. Now I just jumped into this one to see if it had any more details on the Carnage event, the symbiote event that's coming up really soon. So we have Liz Allen, she's still kind of grieving right now. She still has to raise some kids, run a successful business, things like that. It is kind of like secretly just doing this experimentation on these different symbiotes. And so we have like Venom, we have Carnage, we have like anti-Venom, things like that. They're actually trying to do some experiments to try to find like the ultimate symbiotic relationship, which I think is pretty cool. Can we actually put these two different symbiotes together? Can we mix all these different people together and see if we can create like the ultimate soldier and like weaponize this thing in a way? So it's actually pretty interesting to see. Artwork is pretty good too, but I would say it's a very predictable story. It's a story that as you're reading it, you're like, well, of course, this is kind of the inevitable ending of this story. And that's exactly how it played out. So it was still a fun ride at the end of the day, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of Misery here in the subsequent issues. So not too bad, but it's likely a skip, but if you're just consuming everything Carnage and symbiote related right now, you might want to check that one out. Next Marvel book we had this week was Groot issue number 1. Had very low expectations, honestly, going into this. We have like a private Marvel also on the cover right here, and of course we have essentially baby Groot, or it's maybe a Groot that was killed and resurrected and he's just growing up again, who knows. But this is kind of an origin story for Groot and his family on his planet X, I think they call it. And so we actually get to see what is wiping out their planet, who are some of the other Groot creatures out there. And we get to see Marvel and his company come in there to try to save the day. And then it's a really cool interaction between all those different characters. So I thought it was pretty charming from that perspective. I got a little bored here and there, honestly, and some of the machines they were fighting against, the bad guy in this issue that they're fighting against, seemed a little bit, I don't know, out of place in a way. But I mean, I guess very relevant to a tree-like culture, I suppose. But the Kree were really interesting in here. I like that little combination. I like the relationship between them. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading it. I just wanted to touch base with this new number 1 and just see what they had to offer. But maybe not enough to really hook me. If you guys read Groot number 1, let me know what you thought. Next book we had from Marvel was Immortal X-Men issue number 11. We have Gillen back on here with Warnick, and this one was pretty cool. So if you like the flow, the pacing, the storytelling perspective of the previous Immortal X-Men books, this picks it right up from there. A little break from Immoral, since we're past that right now. We're back to Immortal X-Men. And this is featuring Storm right now, so it's really from her perspective. I don't want to spoil too much about what has happened recently to the Council and to the story in general, but we're pretty much past this initial Sins of Sinister event, although there's some seeds planted for further destruction and chaos and stuff with Mother Righteous that's going to unfold in the subsequent issues going forward. But I love Storm's perspective on here. She's actually analyzing every single member of the council right now, trying to see their end game, why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, and they're taking some steps to prevent whatever bombs or secret devices that have been planted mentally inside of these council members. So we're a little bit past this initial Sins of Sinister run, but we're exploring the origins of the Mother Righteous run right now, and so it's an interesting thing, man. It's a very interesting place. Again, if you like the style and the tone of the previous Immortal X-Men issues, I think you're going to dig 11, so check it out. All right, we're going to jump over to DC next. We're going to start with Peacemaker Tries Hard issue number 1 from Kyle Starks. This book is hilarious. If you love the Peacemaker show, or if you enjoyed it, if you liked his portrayal inside of the latest Suicide Squad movie, holy crap, you gotta get this book. It's just such a good ride, man. I felt myself so many times like laughing out loud in here. The artwork really plays to the humor as well. You see Peacemaker here just really like yelling at this store clerk right here. And it's just hilarious how it's actually drawn. I think the emotion's really cool. It looks like John Cena, which absolutely helps right there as well. And I love all the interactions in here. This thing is chock full of comedy. It's suspenseful. It feels just like the show in the movie. So if you like that humor, that pacing, that like just insanity, I think you're going to like this. If you're a fan of the Harley Quinn animated show that's out right now, it has that same kind of vibe too, with like banter between heroes and villains. So they really play into that as well. It's brutal, really brutal. It's just awesome. And it's just like a fun story. So like if you're into just fun comic books, I think this is right up your alley. Be sure to check this one out. Poison Ivy issue number 12 from G. Willow Wilson. We have that Frizzen cover on here, which unfortunately I think my interest in the overall story is decreasing at a rapid rate, but my interest in the covers is maintaining where it is right now because of these Frizzen covers. You know, again, it's an interesting story. She's essentially, Pam is essentially trying to go back and stop her creations from getting out of control right now. There's this flora like virus or something like that, like thing that she's actually trying to spread around the country in the earlier issues of this run. But she's had a little bit of a change of heart, and now she's kind of being the savior right now. And she's having to deal with these creations that she's laid out there mutating and her not being able to control them the way that she expected to. But you know, she's a scientist as well, so she kind of overcomes that. The other insanely strong thing about this book, though, besides the covers, is the interior artwork. It's incredible. I love the interior artwork inside of this book. It's extremely beautiful. I'll try to show you some of the stuff you can look into. They put advertisements for other books in the worst places possible, but the art is incredibly good. It is so good. It reminds me a little bit of Swamp Thing with Perkins and Spicer, the Rom V run. It has a different vibe altogether, storytelling-wise, obviously, but like just looking around the panels and stuff like that, it really reminds me of that run. So if you're into extremely colorful, really gnarly, grotesque artwork, things like that, I think that you're going to really enjoy this book. There's some really beautiful moments in here as well. We get a little Harley reunion in here too. So I would say, unfortunately, the story is, man, it's just not hitting it like it used to in the early issues of this run. I liked her when she was on this revenge mission of taking out the entire world. We backtracked from that a little bit, and now we're fighting against that power that she unleashed as well. But we do get some Harley in here. We'll see where that collaboration can go from here. Dawn of DC, Batman Legacy 900, issue number 135 from Chip Zdarsky. Say that 10 times fast. This was a really cool issue. This run's been getting a little bit of heat just because of how like weird it is and how much it's been jumping around. Batman's in a different, I don't know, I'm going to say multiverse right now for lack of a better term. And he's basically in a Gotham where there's no Batman. He's having to like reunite with all these people in his life in his actual universe, but they're playing different roles, like Alfred even. We have the Red Hood in here. We have Selina in here. We have all these characters in this book just kind of playing different roles because it's a different Gotham. So we initially take out our villain in here, Red Hood, but he's been planting the seeds for like creating these Jokers, which I think is really interesting because it plays into a bunch of other runs. I'll let you get into the details here, but being in issue 900, there's a lot of special cool things that he does towards the back end of this book that I'm definitely not going to spoil for you because I think you need to see it for yourself, because every time I turned the page, I had like oh crap, I can't believe they did that moment for the entire back half of the book. So the story that we had to go through to get to the back end of this issue right here was kind of like, meh, okay. But I think the payoff of where it took us and the places it took us and the people that it showed us I think was worth it from that perspective. And I really need to kind of go back and understand the motives of our villain in this current run right here to really put all the pieces together to understand how this was all possible. If that doesn't make sense, you got to read the book and you got to figure it out for yourself. So the back end of this book is extremely cool. Story leading up to it, I might have to reread to connect all the dots, but it's Batman, man. You got to be reading it. All right, Flash number 798. Just doing a pulse check on here, seeing what's going on. Apparently, the West family is having a new introduction to the family, and so we get to see this joyous occasion right here. But in classic fashion style, man, you can't really enjoy these proud moments, these like happy moments, because something's right around the corner that's going to destroy everything. Of course, this one's actually called Time Heist. We get some Mr. Terrific in here as well, who's a really cool, interesting character, extremely smart and very, very knowledgeable. But again, this is all about some timey-wimey, ultra dimension kind of stuff. And so we get this really cool moment in the beginning where the family's into this like celebration mode. But then it's quickly turned sour by this real unfortunate event and a really sad event. So we get to see this play out a little bit more. So people are jumping back in time, forward in time, wherever they're going to go. I don't know. Trying to find some artifacts to recalibrate time and try to undo what has just happened. Who knows? Flash 798, again, a pulse check for me. I do this every, couple dozen issues if I've missed a whole bunch of them, but still nothing to really grab my attention. Are you reading Flash? What'd you guys think of this one? Shazam issue number 1, Mark Waid, Dan Mora. Again, I was just going to jump into this one to see what was going on. I've really liked the Mark Waid, Dan Mora combination. Lazarus was okay, but like World's Finest and things like that have been extremely interesting to me. So I was excited about the creative team, not necessarily the character they were going to introduce in here, because I'm not a big Shazam fan, to be honest with you. But if you're new to Shazam, if you don't know who he is, this is a perfect book for you to jump into. Even if you know the character, you're not too keen on the character, I think you're going to have a good time reading this just from like a joyous perspective, right? It's just like, okay, it's just fun to see this character living his life, explaining his powers, explaining his history. We have some interesting villains, I guess, introduced in here that we're going to explore, obviously, in the later issues. So if you're new to Shazam, perfect place to jump in. If you don't even like Shazam, you might enjoy this issue. Who knows? I'm kind of walking out of it lukewarm. I'm just way more excited about the creative team, to be honest with you, with Mark Waid and Dan Mora. So I'll probably continue reading it just because they're on it, not because I'm really enjoying the series so far or the story that they've put out so far, but that might change, so we'll see. Did you read Shazam, and what did you guys think? Going over to IDW, we have a bunch of indies, like one-off indie books, so we're going to jump into that next. Going over to IDW, we have TMNT and Usagi Yojimbo, issue number 2. Got that Stan Sakai variant. I wanted to get the Eastman variant as well. It was actually at the shop. I left it there for somebody else to enjoy since it was the last one. But the Eastman variants don't have don't have wraparound covers, and I really, really wish they did, because he does such a good job on the front, and then you turn it and it's just like an advertisement or whatever it is. But on the Stan Sakai ones, man, you get a fold out every time. Maybe he's doing it on the exclusives or the incentives. I don't know. But be that as it may, this is a really cool story. If you're into Turtles or Usagi Yojimbo, I think you're going to love this collaboration again. They've found a way to mash up again in the timelines. They're in Usagi's timeline right now, and so they're having to deal with whatever mission they were currently on at the moment. The artwork and everything is extremely charming. He just does such a good job. I'm like on a TMNT and Usagi high right now, so like anything they put out, I'm just going to recommend and like. But there's an innocence to this that I think is just universal. Everyone's going to love this. It's just a solid read. Nothing crazy happens inside of here. Nothing like profound. It's just a good comic experience, I think. As you can see, it is in color. It's not black and white like you may have seen in the past. We have a villain popping up towards the end that they have to collaborate on and take care of. And it's just a cool thing. I like the buildup and everything. It's just an interesting book, man. So if you're into either of these characters and either of these stories, you got to pick it up. All right, speaking of TMNT, we have TMNT and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue number 5, the conclusion to this arc right here. We had a lot of cool mashups, things like that. Turtles became Rangers, Rangers became mutants. It was all out slugfest. We had some Shredder action in here as well, just kind of like aligning forces with them. Of course, we had some Morphin going on. It was just a great time. We were up against Rita and Krang, and so our heroes here kind of put their forces together and were there able to win the day. But Some alliances they had temporarily are now broken. Some other alliances are forming right now, especially on the villain side. It's going to make for a very, very interesting Volume 3, I suppose, which I am super, super excited for, especially if Dan Mora is on here. Excellent, excellent artwork inside of here. Definitely check it out if you're a Mora fan. Even if you vaguely like TMNT and Power Rangers, I still think you're going to enjoy this. That's what happened to me. Jump in on this one. AWA, we have Trojan issue number 4. Now, I think this book officially came out a week or two ago. Don't really know, but I got my copy in finally here. The issue with a 4-issue run really is there's not a whole lot of time to really tell the story, I think, and to really evolve and to hit all those emotional points that you may have hit building up in issue 1, 2, and 3. Issue 1 was by far the strongest issue they have. 2 and 3 were fine as well, but I really like the introduction to the world, to the characters, to the relationships, to the idea of where we are going. I think the reveal, in issue number 2 at the end was a little bit, it didn't quite hit the mark of who our main character really was or what her potential was. And then we kind of had this backtracking a little bit in this issue about her motivations, things like that, unless she was completely playing into this guy's hand. And if I'm being a little bit vague here, it's kind of on purpose so I don't ruin some of the things for you. But essentially, we have this Red Room situation, and we have these mythical creatures who are in very high demand in this Red Room situation, and she volunteers herself in a way, trying to trick the powers that be so she can infiltrate that place and take it out. And so we do get a little bit of that in here. I think in classic 4 out of 4 issue fashion, the story just kind of falls flat. We didn't have time to really experience things, and it didn't have time to build up the cool stuff that it introduced in issue number 1, as well as maybe they wanted to. And so I think if this was a 6-issue run, it would have read way better. But I'm going to enjoy what we have, so I'm going to enjoy what we got out of these 4 issues, and I would still recommend it. I would just say that the ending is a little bit abrupt and just kind of forced a little bit. So let me know if you read Trojan. I know a lot of you guys out there are reading it. What did you guys think? Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Let me know below. Going over to Mad Cave Studios, we have Monomyth issue number 1 from David Hazan. Now, I just saw this at the shop. I didn't have it pre-ordered, wanted to check it out and see what was going on inside of here. It's actually a pretty cool book so far. If you're into like wizards and magic and things like that, I think you might enjoy this. We actually have a little bit of like time travel-ish kind of stuff going on. We're visiting this wizard right now at the end of his life, like using all of his energy to cast that one last spell, right? And that one last spell is essentially going into the future and plucking these individuals out of the future, bringing him to his castle to essentially train them or prepare them for the battles that they will eventually face. And so it's them getting oriented to that situation because none of them have magical inspirations to begin with. And so they're all thrown into this environment all at once. They have to traverse this freaky castle, avoid these big monsters, things like that, avoid the pitfalls that they see when they enter the castle, and they get a little bit of a shock about what their destinies actually are. So I thought this was very well done. I'm very interested to see where this book goes. I'm into that magic kind of stuff though as well, so maybe that helps. But I like the art, I like the story, I like where it's going. Monomyth, what a pleasant surprise this one was. All right, Astrobots issue number 1 from Whatnot Publishing. I actually reviewed this book maybe a month ago at this point. I got an early access to that one, and it was not bad. If you haven't been into the Whatnot books so far, I think this is the best book to be released so far on here, especially if you're into GoBots, Transformers, things like that. The story in this book is pretty interesting. It's essentially, what I can glean from it is we have societies essentially on this giant arc. So it's filled with, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people potentially going to the next planet that's habitable. And prior to them arriving, they would send this armada of robots out there, and they would basically develop civilization. They would develop the cities, the walls. They'd make sure everything is safe, kill all the hostile beings on that planet to prep the planet for the arrival of this ark. And so that's where we are right now. We are looking from the perspective of this guy who's running this town right now, this robot running this town right now, preparing for the ark to arrive. And of course, there's a lot of chaos and things going on. Art is incredible inside this book. Again, if you're into Transformers or GoBots, stuff like that, I think you'll appreciate all the detail they put inside of these bodies. They're not simple art pieces of machinery by any means. Coloring is real good too. So Astrobots is probably my favorite Whatnot book as of right now. So check that one out, especially if you're into Transformers. Dark Horse Comics, we have Matt Kint on Hairball issue number 2. Man, this book is crazy. We talked about issue number 1 in depth on Pop Culture Philosopher's best comics of the month. And so check that out if you want our maybe our assumptions, our guesses on where the story is going to go, exactly who this cat is or what this cat is, because it's insane. And I think a lot of my perspective has changed after reading issue number 2. We didn't quite know if this cat was actually a living thing or if this was like her, the little girl in the story, the main character, maybe projecting herself into this cat, or maybe using this cat as a scapegoat for the actions that she has around the house with her foster parents, things like that. But essentially, we have this little girl entering this foster family situation. She is immediately met with a dysfunctional relationship between the mother and the father, the adopted mother and the father. And so basically she's going through therapy, and we're learning a little bit about her thought process, what's actually going on. We witness mom and dad fighting a lot to the point where there's like physical abuse and things like that. And then we have this strange cat coming in here with supposedly these powers that can actually influence her and her actions and her foster family's actions. So this book was just very, very intriguing. It's kind of a little bit of a mind game. And after reading issue number 2, I have no doubt that the cat is actually a physical being inside the house. Now, is this cat like supernatural, super powered? What's actually going on? What's the motivation? We're going to explore that a little bit more, but it definitely has that little taste of horror as well. So if you're into horror, if you like real emotional kind of books, if you're into Matt Kent stuff, I think you're really going to dig Hairball, so check that one out. All right, Dark Horse Comics, Where Monsters Lie, issue number 4, Kyle Starks. Man, Kyle Starks is killing it right now in like the humor department, because with Peacemaker and everything, I'm loving his sense of humor in here. Issue number 1 of Where Monsters Lie was extremely special in the fact that it had just this levity to it that I've never seen in comics before. It was so cool to see this like brutal environment, these brutal characters, these serial killers, mass killers, having this kind of a relationship and conversation where they're having essentially like an HOA meeting in this old lady's house and talking about day-to-day operations inside their community. It was so funny. Then it got real brutal when you have cops and detectives and things like that involved. That was kind of fun to see. Issue number 3 trailed off a little bit on like the levity part, like the humor part, I thought, but issue number 4, man, it kicked it right back up. It brought us back to what I loved about issue number 1. Extremely excited to see where the series goes, because at the end of this, we were hinted that we're going to continue forward on there, and I really, really hope we do. Where Monsters Lie, hilarious book. Awesome. Check it out. So guys, that's everything I read this week. I hope you appreciated that. Go down below in the comments and let me know what your favorite books of the week were. And while you're down there, if you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so down below and check out that join button as well. But as always, I really appreciate you watching the video. I will see you all down below in the comments.